This video is sponsored by TinkerTurf. Welcome, adventurers, to another exploration of the different player characters that you can partake as in the game Soulbound by Cubicle 7, set in the Age of Sigmar universe. Now, today we're going to be taking a look at the Stormcast Eternals, sort of the poster boys and girls of the entire Age of Sigmar setting, and shows up prominently in quite a bit of the artwork. So how this is going to work is we're going to give a very broad overview of the lore of the Stormcast Eternals, more of a primer than anything else. If you want more detail, I actually have a full playlist centered around them in the description down below. You can go check that out. But this will be a great introduction to the concept of them as an army for any player to be able to pick up a character and start role-playing as them. And after that, we're going to talk about the different archetypes or classes that you can play as, because they come with 4 and they're all different kinds of abilities and things like that. Then we'll round out the discussion with basically what do Stormcast Eternals bring to a binding or a party. What are the tools that they have available to them? What are their strengths, weaknesses, that kind of stuff. And then we'll end it by taking a look at a pre-generated character that Cubicle 7 put together, because I think looking at player character sheets, for me anyway, it puts a lot of the kind of abilities and stuff into context, right? It kind of lets me see on a piece of paper, this is where all my abilities and stuff are, and so we'll check that out later. Now, rather than staring at my mug for the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to go ahead and throw up some really good artwork for you to get you inspired. So have a listen and kind of get in the zone to learn more about the Stormcast Eternals. So who the heck are the Stormcast Eternals? Well, for that we need just a little bit of history for some context, painted with some broad strokes. I try not to get too bogged down in details with these kinds of videos. The Age of Chaos was a setting-defining time period where the Chaos Gods entered the realms and became utterly unstoppable. The God of Heavens, Sigmar, saw what was going on and tried to fight them off, but the combined might of the Chaos armies was just too much for him, and so he sounded the retreat. While Chaos was snaking its way into every realm, Sigmar was able to isolate, or I guess kind of quarantine, his own realm of Azir. Every realm gate leading to there was sealed with these intense magical bindings, and for hundreds of years, the rest of the realms were left to survive on their own. The other gods from Sigmar's pantheon each fending for themselves and their own people. Now, when the gates of Azir were closed, it wasn't like Sigmar just, brushed his hands and was super happy, he felt safe and cool and everything was fine. No, he wanted to reclaim the realms, everything else. So much had been lost, and giving up on it was simply not an option to him. But Sigmar's plan wasn't just to hide, he needed time. Time to build a weapon that could go toe-to-toe with the worst horrors that the Chaos Gods could throw at him. And so, pulling in favors from the dwarven or dwarden god of engineering and craftsmanship Grugni, Sigmar created an army which he named the Stormcast Eternals, his weapon against chaos. Now, to start, Sigmar scoured the realms for souls, right? He needs heroes to be a part of his army. Men and women who spent their last breath either praising his name or killing as many followers of the dark gods as they could before their death. People of faith, determination, grit, and even zeal. And for the majority of Stormcast Eternals, that's exactly how it was, right? Right at their moment of death, Sigmar would strike the battlefield with lightning, and the Chaos forces would be perplexed because their prey, the person they were just about to kill, disappeared with the flash. For some, notably the Anvils of Heldenhammer, those are the Stormcasts with the black armor, these heroes were already dead. These were valiant conquerors who passed away long before the Age of Chaos, and for these, Sigmar went down to the realm of death, Shyish, and stole these souls from Nagash's clutches, a debt that would never be forgiven. But regardless of how or where they were obtained, Sigmar had accrued all these souls, and so now what? Well, upon the kind of an object or an arcane kind of process known as the Anvil of Apotheosis, each soul was hammered and molded and shaped much like a smith tempering and forming iron. Any impurities within his soldiers were burned away in a ritual that caused unbelievable amounts of pain, in addition to the purity aspect of trying to get rid of anything that might be chaos-oriented within them. The process had a secondary purpose. the God King infused or imbued every warrior with just a fraction of his heavenly might, right? Essentially infusing each Stormcast with strength and speed and power that could not be matched by any mortal. It also rendered their souls eternal. So what that means is from now on, whenever a Stormcast falls in battle, instead of dying, their souls go back to Azir. The power of the heavens within them pulls the soul back to Azir, where they can be forged again into a new form. Essentially, he made the souls of these warriors recyclable, right? He constructs a new body with blood and bones and armor and all for them each time they are reforged. So he has an army that is big and powerful, built for attrition on a scale that's unheard of, because it brings the same warriors back over and over again, and it could, in theory, go on in perpetuity. And initially, when Age of Sigmar came out, a lot of folks were complaining that sounded kind of dull from a character perspective, right? They never die, they just come back, there's no real fear or sense of loss, but there's a lot more going on behind the surface. Each time a Stormcast Eternal dies, they lose a bit of their soul. The claws of the grave still constantly pulling at that which it is denied. So as Stormcast Eternals fight and die over and over again, the flaws that are in the reforging process become more and more pronounced. And while these flaws can affect Stormcast in any number of ways, there are some common ones. Things like memory loss or a lack of empathy. They can lose abilities, like some lose the ability to speak. They can become intolerant of anything they perceive as evil or immoral, but to a dangerous degree. There's even stories of Stormcast Eternals who have been changed somewhat by the reforging process, and obviously war in general, that come upon a city that is still good, but the plagues of Nurgle are affecting them, so good folks who are just very sick. So rather than try to heal them or something like that, they raze the town, right? They burn the town to the ground, they kill everyone in an effort to contain this Nurgle contagion. And which gets you to that kind of dark, sort of like technically good but morally dubious at best kind of territory. That's the kind of thing where I'm talking about, where they're obviously, they did quote unquote the right thing, but they didn't do like the good, classic, heroic, paragon of excellence kind of thing. They are the defenders of the realms, but they sacrificed their humanity and souls to do it. And so, more and more, as time goes on, the guardians of society become scarier. They started as a defending army, but are slowly becoming this emotionless, almost inquisition that makes the citizens of the realms very uneasy. They are not evil, they're not chaos, nothing like that. And the ones who are kind of too far gone tend to be put into like a stasis, if you will, like when they just don't get a new body, they're kind of thrown into a chest. But my point is that these are not perfect heroes, fighting forever without consequence. Now, there is a ton more to cover about Stormcast Eternals, way more than a single video could ever hope to do. So like I said before, in the description below, I have a link to a Stormcast Eternals playlist. Go check that out. I go into way more detail about the reforging and the flaws and all that kind of stuff, as well as like how they're structured and organized. But I think the above description does enough to kind of get you in there. Just the idea that they're engineered from the soul up, right? Warrior demigods, utterly incorruptible. But now what I'd like to do is sort of pivot into talking about the different kinds of Stormcast Eternals you can play as in Soulbound. Now, keep in mind there is a new supplement coming out at some point with more options for us, but this is going to cover most of them that you would have access to right away. We're going to talk about all 4 of the different archetypes available, what they bring to the binding, and take a look at the character sheet just after this quick word from our sponsor. So today I wanted to talk to you about TinkerTurf. TinkerTurf is an incredible company that's been lowering the barrier to entry into this hobby since about 2018 with the launch of their TinkerTurf terrain set. Simply put, these are innovative little modular terrain systems that kind of snap together like Legos, and they allow you to create some incredible landscapes, but they come in these very cool sci-fi themed kits that I think you're going to love. They asked me to shout out to a Kickstarter they have going right now with some very unique designs that I wanted to show off. One of the pieces, I'm actually going to show it to you right now. This is the SATCOM array. Now, let me tell you a real life story about why I'm so excited about this. It has to do with the structure's height. You see, back in Seattle, I was actually playing on Tinkerturf Terrain unknowingly at a local game store. The store owned it. And we're playing Necromunda, and this one Gene Stealer cult player thought he'd be real dodgy, and he got up on top of what is essentially this. I'll show the picture here. It's the MacLeod like station. And he got up there and he was like taking pot shots at us, but none of us could really reach him. So round 3, I'm like, forget this. And I turned everything and shot at him. Now, I couldn't actually hurt him, but there were enough shots to make him fall. And when he fell from that height, he landed on the ground, which in Necromunda terms, basically in terms of damage, he took like a last gun, like a cannon shot to the face is basically how the damage panned out, but he survived. And all of us were cheering and screaming and having a wonderful time whooping and hollering about it. It was just the coolest thing. But the reason that story is so significant to me is because it's a perfect visualization of why these kinds of terrain sets matter. In addition to the SATCOM array, they have a few things here. I'm going to read them off here. They have the perimeter walls, including a rad guard tower and a door that actually opens. I love that one. Of course, I mentioned, obviously, the train station, but they have a new train set with tracks, so you can actually have that kind of cutting and dissecting your battlefield for cover and stuff. All of it's modular, and it works with all of their existing terrain products. So if you would please head on over after this video is done to the link in the description down below, check out their Kickstarter, support these guys, support small businesses who make this hobby so rewarding for us. Thank you for listening, and now let's get back to the video. First up is the Knight Azeros, and the Knight Azeros has a myriad of roles, sort of acting like a great second in command of an army with a lot of autonomy. You see, he bears a lantern that contains a beam of pure light from Azir. He can use this to bring illumination to the darkest parts of the realms, reveal enemies or illusions or things like that. But even more than that kind of practical purpose, he can heal wounds, he can purge corruption, and more. To make their relative autonomy even more impressive, they soar in the sky with a set of wings that are basically grafted, they're mechanical wings grafted into their armor, so to speak. They're not actually angels. But this makes them perfect for roles as something like emissaries or diplomats, representatives for the forces of order. To bring this to the table, they really lean into the soul attribute. They have a soul of 4, and they are the Stormcast Eternals capable of the miracles of Sigmar, right? So they kind of have this priestly vibe with a dash of, being a powerful orator or being able to kind of work through situations with NPCs, things like that. Now next up is the Knight Incantor, precisely what you get when a Stormcast Eternal is forged from the soul of a mage or a wizard. Where the Knight Azeros is more of a priest type, these are the terrifying wizards that channel powers of lightning in the heavens. And they have access to the celestial lore of spells, which are a fantastic toolbox, right? They have healing lights, they have divination to kind of predict the future a bit, but they can also do things like chain lightning and pull meteors straight up from the sky at people. A lot of damage dealing spells with a variety of ranges and target areas. So as far as like what makes a Knight Incantor unique, in addition to being wizard, is this little secret mission they have. So like the wizard stuff aside is just awesome, right? But the secret mission I want to talk to you about. You see, while all the Stormcast Eternals know about the flaws in the reforging process, they rarely ever talk about it because it's just like a terrifying notion to them. But the task was given to the Sacrosanct Chamber, a fancy word for the magic-focused Stormcast Eternals, to find a solution for it. So, when you play as a Knight Incantor, you are a full Stormcast Eternal, but also in the background, as opposed to the other Stormcasts in your party, you're trying to collect any information, myths, artifacts, anything you can that might help researching a cure for the flaw. Why do the souls keep getting chipped away every time we're reforged? And I find that really intriguing because I like when certain units have a built-in side quest, right? Some ulterior motive that may take them to interesting places or have them do decisions that would kind of seem out of the way or out of the norm. Moving on to the Knight Questor, these are going to be your more melee-focused heroes for your Stormcast. Essentially, there are tasks that Sigmar needs done in the realms that don't really require an army, like taking out a specific Chaos Lord, finding out why orcs are raiding trade routes, etc. These kind of like minor endeavors in the grand scope of the realms. Well, those kinds of duties fall to the shoulders of the Knight Questor, a completely independent soldier that really takes on the life of an adventurer. No one can issue them orders or commands. Their mission is their own. And like I said, they really are like the warrior class of Stormcast we have here, focusing on combat primarily, but also having the ability to learn things like lore or theology, because they are intelligent. They're not just warriors. They can do other things as well. And there would be a variety of reasons why one would end up with a binding, right? To keep tabs on them or assist them along a certain stretch of the journey. And one of these guys, the Knight Questors, could also be one of the characters who delivers the mission to the binding, just acting as a representative of Sigmar. And lastly is the Knight Venator, and my personal favorite. You see, on the surface, these may look like the Knight Azeros, right? Super independent Stormcast, flying around on wings, and while they do have these things in common, there's a lot that separates them. The Knight Venator is first and foremost a scout and hunter, often used for reconnaissance, bounty hunting, and sometimes even assassinations. They swoop in at speeds that are hard to fathom and fight with these lightning-blessed arrows that just have unrivaled precision, right? They're just these monsters with a bow. To that end, they are your ranged variant of Stormcast Eternals, wielding the Realm Hunter bow and a full suite of talents to crank their shooting up to 11. Also with him is a Celestial Star Eagle. It's part of his talents that he comes with, and this is a bird straight from the skies of Azir. It kind of acts as his tracker and companion, sort of like how a hunter would take a dog out with him, but it's kind of a fierce and cunning spirit in its own right. And when it's all combined, this makes for an incredible character, an archer-style character, moving swift from, different firing lanes to different targets and all this kinds of stuff. He can just kind of be a blurry of motion and murder. So those are the 4 archetypes that come in the core book. But with that out of the way, let's talk about what Stormcast Eternals bring to a binding. Well, technically, nothing. Something that is super unique about Stormcast Eternals in this game is that they can never be Soulbound, nor can Soulbound ever become Stormcast Eternals. Essentially, all that manipulation of the soul required to make either a Stormcast or a Soulbound means they can't switch. There's some part of it that's just incongruous with each other. So I kind of half-jokingly said they bring nothing to a binding. It's because they can't tap into what a binding has, like the soul fire that's linked between them and that kind of stuff. And I say that in absolute jest, but of course, if they are with your party, they can certainly help a binding in massive ways. First off, just looking at the characters, all of them have a body stat of at least 3, and access to the weapon skill. So no matter which variant you choose, even the wizard one, you can certainly make a capable fighter. And the worst armor here is still medium armor, so they're immediately more tanky than many of the other character options. Lastly, their special rule is Reforged. Essentially, this character can die, and when the GM and the player character agree on a narratively a good time for them to come back, they're going to pop right back into the game. So GMs, be sure to detail how the flaw affected this character, because it goes a long way to making them unique if your Stormcast player does die. That means at minimum, you get a decent fighter, a decent tank, and it keeps coming back, albeit at irregular times. Beyond that, pick your flavor. I really like the 4 options that we have, and I think they make fantastic characters to have as guests joining binding in. So for example, GMs, if you have a friend who just wants to try the game out, having a Stormcast character on the sidelines, it's already pre-made. They can pop in, this is a Knight Questor who was just kind of working alongside our party for this small stretch of the journey. That's the perfect excuse to have a Stormcast injected. And of course, because Knight Questors take orders only from Sigmar, it makes perfect sense if they would just duck out. They have other stuff going on. But while that character is with you or in your party or visiting or whatever the case, they fit perfectly into kind of the 4 classic, archetypes, if you will. Or you have priest, warrior, mage, and ranger. So GMs, if there's a chance you need to have a player character ready, just throw one of these into your binder. Just kind of have it ready for them. So with that all out of the way, we're going to head over to the shared screen and take a look at a pre-made character by the good folks over at Cubicle 7 to kind of put some of these demigod aspects into perspective and context. And here we are with our pre-generated character. Now, GMs, if you are looking to have a Stormcast character sort of on the back burner just in case someone pops into your game or whatever, this is available for free at download over at Cubicle 7 on their downloads page. So go ahead and check it out. But the character's name today is Vel Alturius, and I like that name, nice and knightly. He is a Knight Questor, which, as we just reviewed, is sort of the more melee-focused variant of the Stormcast. Obviously, he's a Stormcast Eternal. He's in his 30s, and Holden, if you know what I mean, because he's locked in time. Anyway, piercing brown eyes, brown hair, 7 foot 5 inches, and 282 pounds. He has a scar on the right side of his face, streaked with blue face paint. That's rad. They put a little thought in these little guys they pre-generate, so I do recommend you go check them out. Now, as far as the stats, they kept the stats the exact same. As far as I can tell, let me see. I don't see any notes. Nope. Body of 4, because he's a melee monster. Mind of 2, and a soul of 3. Now, as far as his points and experience and stuff they dumped into things, they put it into athletics. Looks like determination, they gave it a training and a focus, which is fantastic. I mean, there's going to be tests where he, as a character, is going to, he's going to need the mental fortitude, you know what I mean? Or not fortitude, that's actually a skill, but the determination, that stat is going to come up if he's being a melee tank, just kind of rushing into combat. He also has, again, 1 training in fortitude, so things that are nasty and gross and hard to deal with, he was going to persevere through. He can also intimidate people, and I do think, this is just a personal opinion, if you're making a Stormcast player, they are all uber tall. They're huge characters, and so having at least 1 point in intimidate, I think it's just very cool. It's very, I don't know, it makes sense. Over here we have might, which is an interesting one. Okay, I didn't see that coming. And then we have theology, which again, I kind of pointed it out in their lore section. These are Stormcast, they're not just warriors. It's not like they're just made for war and nothing else. They have beliefs, they have faith and all that kind of stuff. And then here at the bottom for weapon skill, they dumped 1 training and 1 focus just to really drive home this guy is mean. So he's going to be shredding stuff, I have no doubt. Let's take a look here at the goals. Goals are always a sticking point, I think, for a lot of players because they're sort of an odd, amorphous thing. But short term, track down my missing ally from my former Storm host. That's really cool. That's a great thing to throw GMs a little bit. And long term is rid Brightspear of Tzeentch's influence. So that could be a whole campaign sort of thing. Now, as far as talents go, he listed off his Stormcast Eternals. He's been reforged. I have died and been reforged 5 times already. So he might not be the friendliest dude. When you factor in that and all his intimidate stuff, I could absolutely see that. He also has Heroic Challenge. You can call out a challenge to one of your enemies, demanding they face you. As an action, choose a creature within medium range. If the creature attacks any target other than you, its melee and accuracy decrease 1 step on the little ladder we got here, and that's huge. Additionally, your melee increases 1 step when attacking the target of your challenge. This effect lasts until the end of combat. Now that's incredible. So not only does he naturally have a body of 4, weapon skills that buff that even more, but now he can call out a singular target, whoever the big baddie is, or one of a pair of them or whatever, and just really hammer into that. Now, this can create a situation, I'm just gonna be honest, where during the early parts of a campaign, monsters just get smoked immediately. However, it's going to not feel so crazy powered once you start getting into more of the higher tier of monsters and that kind of stuff. Because again, if you have 4 Zangor or Blight Kings or whatever, bigger heroes than just say a Skaven Rat, then all of a sudden he can only pick one of them, right? And so that's an interesting thing where if there's multiple threats of equal value, that's where that starts to matter. So GM's just got to keep that in mind. It's going to seem too good to be true in the early parts of a campaign, but as challenges get more difficult, it'll kind of chill out a little bit. Then he has Bulwark. You are a stalwart defender able to hold off numerous enemies at once. If 2 or more enemies are within close range of you at the start of your turn, your defense increases 1 step. This benefit lasts until the start of your next turn. So that is also interesting. He, like I said, fantastic tank. He wants to be the person to attract all the combat. Then he has combat reflexes. You are always ready for a fight and never caught off guard. You gain a +2 bonus to your initiative and can never be surprised in combat. Now, the surprise thing is actually really important because there are modifiers and that kind of stuff when it comes to being surprised that like normally you would have access to, but if you're being ambushed, you don't. And so it kind of limits some of your options. So the fact that he can't be surprised means there's never a point where he's not going to be functioning at like peak capacity, so to speak. And he's just like ready for it. So that's really awesome. And then intimidating manner. People tend to not mess with you due to your intimidating manner. You have advantage on opposed tests to threaten, intimidate, cajole, and start arguments with others. Additionally, people will often leave you alone when you are somewhere you don't belong for fear of angering you. I have that for my character, the Excelsior War Priest, and I freaking love it. Straight up, I absolutely love it. It comes into play quite a bit. So as you can see, a lot of these things, 3 out of the 4 here are melee centric and when he wants to get into battle. But the last one has to do with other stuff as far as interacting with NPCs and things. I love it. Coming down here to the combat abilities, we can look and see at his chart here. This is the ranking where he's going to be comparing himself to other people. He has a good attack, good defense. And remember, this does not account for the special rules that we're going to raise him up a step or his opponent down a step, so that will matter tremendously. Like honestly, more likely he's going to be operating at great than he is at good, just because of all the bonuses and stuff, but he can be super nasty. So, nope, he has a poor ballistics, but he doesn't have a gun, so it's like whatever. Initiative 4, armor 3, because he's rocking the heavy armor, so he is very hard to hurt because he's just going to be negating wounds left and right. 2 metal, so he can go hog wild when he picks a target. If he's in like bulwark mode with them, like where he's like uber defensy, he can just keep hammering them away with all these attacks. So he is a blender, and he has a toughness of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wounds, which is pretty typical, but I think that toughness of 9 and all of the defensive things really, I don't know. They may more than make up for the fact that he doesn't have more wounds. It's just like he's just a tank. As far as his weapon goes, Quester Warblade, his pool, this is just calculated based on the above information. He's going to be rolling 5 dice. That is 4 body and +1 for weapon skill training. And then the focus is +1 from the focus he has in weapon skill. The damage is going to be the number of successes +1 and Sigmarite and slashing. Those will just come up depending on the kind of enemy. As we scroll down here, we see the different kind of armaments he has. You can always buy a helmet or something for him if you want, but certainly not required. And he starts with 65 gold. Now, this is quite possibly the most simple of the pre-made characters because he is without a doubt, she, I just saw the picture for the first time. She is without a doubt meant to be an intense warrior class, right? Like, she doesn't take no guff. She's going to plant that shield in the ground, do her bulwark ability, single out the most important, dangerous target from this entire, whatever enemy you're facing in that encounter, and then just go hog wild and destroy them. That's the idea. And so Vel, that name makes a lot more sense now that I know it's a female. Vel is a pretty awesome fighter by all accounts. So again, this is an example of how the Stormcast have leaned heavily into one archetype or one kind of idea. This is obviously the warrior class or barbarian or something like that. But I like the fact that they have peppered in these other little things, like, for example, having a focus in theology or intimidating manner, as far as like for tests that go with NPCs for getting information. You can intimidate and cajole and all those kinds of things. I just really like that. I love the fact that, this character has a presence to it, where if Vel walks into a tavern everyone's going to stop and stare, right? She's uber tall. She's massive. She's like, in terms of just like the heavy armor and the big shield, like everything is just exaggerated. In between that and the intimidating manner, and what was the other one I was looking at? Intimidation. I love that stuff. It's awesome. So I hope that you enjoy this character. Let's go ahead and round out the episode. So friends, I hope that was good for you as far as getting you a kind of a brief primer for the lore behind the Stormcast Eternals and the variants that you can play right now in Age of Sigmar Soulbound. Now, like I said before, in the description down below, I do have links to a full Stormcast playlist where there's a lot more information, talked about the other units and reforging a bit more and all kinds of stuff. But I do believe this will be enough to get you started with just a pickup character or something like that. And I do hope that you try them out because they are quite tanky and quite excellent in any binding. So friends, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope to catch you next time in my next Age of Sigmar character, lore video exploration for Soulbound. Anyway, happy adventuring.